I'm just going to talk through some of the features of this camera, and some people may not be fully aware of what the camera is and what it can do. So it is a mirrorless compact, and of course I do have the camera with me, so here it is. It's a pretty lightweight camera compared to a lot of the options out there, and it's a completely different way of working, and I'll go on to that in a little bit. It's similar to the A7S Mark II, if you're familiar with that one, but it does have a swiveling screen. So one of the problems with the Mark II was the screen didn't swivel out, but of course this one has this lovely swiveling screen that you can move to all sorts of different positions. I'll switch the camera on, that would help, and then you can see that you can do low angle and high angle shots by swiveling the screen to different angles like that, which is really useful. But of course it can just flop back onto the body as normal like that too. So we've got that as a feature. There's also, hang on a second, 2 card slots, so you can put two cards in. There are more buttons than the Mark II, and also there's a really neat joystick which you can use to control various things. Okay, and considering the performance, what the camera can do, it's amazingly compact and lightweight. So it rivals the FS7, which is of course a full-size shoulder-mounted camera, and some of the qualities and the features of this camera are virtually identical to the FS7. So it's a different camera to a camcorder. So if we were looking at like the Z150 or some of the other, traditional camcorder styles, it's not like that. It's also not like a C300 and other cine cameras. There's lots of little differences that make this unique. So why? It's mainly the automatic functions that have really come on. The autofocus, the auto exposure are really usable now. It has a touch screen, so we can use that to do things like focus. And of course, the size and the shape are completely different from a lot of other cameras. Cards, in terms of recording cards, it takes SDXC cards, and also there's a new card, which is the Compact Flash Express Type A. I wish there was a quicker way of describing that, but it's a CF Express Type A. But we don't really need that card unless you're doing top-notch qualities. So 4K and high frame rates. And it's really only the very highest frame rate that you need that CF Express card. So most people have gone for this V90 card. So that gives you access to virtually every quality. So it's a 128 gig V90 card there. The pins are a bit different on the back. If you look, there's another row of, oh God, I can get it to show you, another row of gold pins on the back there. But that goes into the camera on the right-hand side, into the 2 slots. I'm going to put it in the top slot like that, and the hatch just shoves shut like that. To open the hatch, you pull that down, slide back and open. So to close it, you do that and then just click it back into position like that. The recording qualities are immense. You can record 4K at 600 megabits per second. Now, just as a comparison, the FS7 does 200 megabits per second. So it really is an amazing quality if you wanted to go that far, but you would need the CF Express cards to record at that quality. But you can come down and down and down in quality, all the way down to 6 megabits per second. So again, who knows, so yeah, sorry, 50 megabits per second in most cameras. That's the sort of average sort of bit rate that most people will be looking at. But the lower qualities, 6 megabits per second, could be useful if you need to file a report quickly over the internet, or to send pictures and sound back through some sort of connectivity. Then the lower bit rate might just be the way to get it back really quickly. Okay, so there are some new codecs, or new to this camera and us. And this is the H.265. There's a lot of jargon here. I do apologize for this. But the H.265 codec is efficient. So it means it's a lower bit rate, and it would allow you to get more material on the cards. And also, if you're sending the material across some sort of connection, it would be more efficient there. But also at the other end of the spectrum, there's an all-eye codec. And again, this gives you great quality. So it means that you can do color grading and shoot in log and do all that sort of thing. But also it's easy on your edit machinery. It means that the edit machinery doesn't have to decode as much as it does with the other codecs. So you'll find that doing complicated edits, and especially if you've got an older computer that doesn't run so fast, the all-eye codec is good for that. The cameras should be up to date, but when I got mine here, it was on version 1. So I had to update the firmware, which just does require a download from Sony and also a procedure to install it. And that would be a little bit of a job to do, but it's worth doing. Also, the settings on the BBC News website require that firmware. And the settings that I've come up with for you as well do require the version 2.1. So it needs you to connect the camera to a computer. It needs you to download a little app that runs on the computer, and then it upgrades the firmware, probably about 20 minutes, something like that. And this is something that all cameras need these days regularly. And sometimes they expose more features, but other times they're just bugs and fixes that will help the operation of the camera. So I'm going to just show you how to load the settings in. This is not firmware. So this is actually just the settings on the camera. So what we've got then is a card in the camera. This is the first time you've seen the menu, but if we go down to where we were before, which is there, the briefcase or toolkit, I think it is actually, and then reset, save settings, save load settings. So load, and we've got a number of files here. So these first 3 are ones that BBC News have generated for use on this camera. But I've done a couple of little tweaks and created one called BBC World Service there. So I'm going to load that in. In fact, it's already loaded in, so I'm not going to load it in. But that's where you do it. Once those settings have been loaded in, then the camera is in a usable state, and obviously you can change the settings and use different settings. But for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to assume that the settings that are in the camera are those BBC WS settings, which I've created over the past couple of weeks. So at the front of the camera then, we've got a shutter release button, which is right, if I get my camera on it there, on the power. So there's an on-off power button there, and then it's where you take a picture, really, a snap on the camera. So that stops and starts the recording. And we've got the LCD screen at the back. Now I've got to unplug it from my HDMI to show you the picture there. So I've already shown you how that can swivel out. That's really nice. But of course, the eyepiece is really useful. So I prefer a button to change between the two of them. So I've actually put it on this central button here. So when you press that button, the screen goes dead, and the actual eyepiece, God, can you, will it come up if I do that? Oh, there, you saw a flash of it, didn't you? There you go. It's got a sensor, so it only comes on when it's close, like that. And then you pull it away and it goes off. But to get the screen back, and I don't know why I'm recording, I must have tapped that button. So yeah, you get that option of using the eyepiece or the screen. And also, there's a button called display, which gets rid of the text or a lot of the text. So the one at the top there called display, it just takes off a lot of the clutter from the screen. So it's good to have a clearer screen sometimes to see things. So that's what the top button does. And then the middle button just swaps between the eyepiece and the screen. To play back, it's very simple. There's a playback button just there. Press the button and you get the usual sort of playback menu, but because it's touch screen, I can use that to play my, so that's playing the clip back, which is really nice. What we've got on the camera at the moment is an XLR box, which sits on top of the camera. And that has two XLR inputs here. Obviously, we've got a gun mic on top of the camera, but also I've got a radio mic receiver. So this is the Sony dual radio mic receiver there. And I've decided to put the camera into 4-channel mode. So what this means is that you get 4 separate audio recording channels, which obviously is absolutely fantastic. And we've only ever had that on the FS7. So in a compact mirrorless camera, it's absolutely amazing. And that means you can have 2 radio mics and also the top mic on the camera recording as well. And that's super flexible in terms of choices in post-production and using the different mics for different purposes. Okay, so how does that work then? Well, what I've done is plugged the radio mics into a little jack here. So this is the XLR box. I've got my 2, if I just open those up, you'll be able to see them a bit clearer. 2 XLR inputs. Input 1, or if I move that out of the way, it'll say input 1 and input 2. So I've got my gun mic, my fluffy mic here plugged into input 1. Now this input 3 is a mini jack. Okay, so that's the mini jack there, and that's going into input 3, which is just there like that. And there's a lot of switches on this box. On the side there, there's an input select. There's also a digital or analog selection. And I've put it on digital because that gives us the very best quality. That's actually the connection between the box and the camera is digital. And the input select, I've got on the lowest position there, input 1. That's a very complicated switch. I'm not going to go into the finer details of that, but just to say in this setup, I've got it on in 1, like that. And then on the level controls here, there's all sorts of settings to do with sound levels. Well, obviously you'll be adjusting those depending on the sound source that you're recording. And also the attenuation levels will depend on the sound level you're expecting. We do want the 48 volts on, okay? But
that's for the floppy mic, that's for the top mic, right?
This is all for the top mic, yes, yeah. So what I've been doing is setting channel 1 somewhere sensible and then channel 2 a bit lower, because the way I've set this up, is that the fluffy mic, the gun on the camera, is going to both channels 1 and channels 2. So it's going to both channel 1 and channel 2, but channel 2 is at a lower level. So that means that if you are if you're filming something and you can't pay attention to the sound levels, then you can save the day by going to channel 2, which is a lower level. Now, I did do some filming at the weekend and this exact thing happened. So I'm just going to try and play you a clip. So this is a clip where the first part of it, I'm choosing channel 1, and then in the edit, I went over to channel 2. So it's horribly distorted on the first part of the clip, and then it switches to channel 2. So let's have a go with that. Yeah, you've got level controls for input 1 and 2 that we've just met just here, but 3 and 4 are on this one. I know it says it's very confusing because input 3 is a physical socket on the camera. So input 3 is that mini jack, which is just round the back there. Okay, so we go around here and we're on input 3 like that. But in actual fact, input 3 is a stereo input. So in fact, what I've done on my PowerPoint isn't quite right, actually. What I mean is channels. I mean channel 3 and 4, not input 3 and 4. Okay, so this adjusts the level for the radio mics, basically. So I've got a couple of radio mics here. So I'm going to switch these on and then show you what happens. Okay, so if we plug the camera in, you'll be able to see the level meters on the camera. So I've got basically the channel 1 and 2. In fact, I'll do that so it's clearer. Channel 1 and channel 2 are the mic on top of the camera. So you can see that channel 1 is louder than channel 2, but I can obviously adjust those to suit the environment. I might go a bit lower for channel 1 at the moment, like that. But then obviously if I got a little overexcited and started shouting like that, channel 1 peaks and channel 2 doesn't. Now, a very interesting point on this camera is that channel 1 and 2 don't have limiters. Now, limiters are really important because they stop your sound distorting when it gets loud. But on the A7S Mark III, there are no limiters on channel 1 and channel 2. So it's very important to get channel 1 and channel 2 the correct level. But we can do that, obviously, by having this sort of thing. Now, if I switch my radio mics on the receiver like this, you can see that I've got channel 3 and channel 4. Now, channel 3 and channel 4 does have a limiter. So if I pick up one of these radio mics and put it a bit nearer my mouth, so that's channel 4 there, that's a bit nearer my mouth. And you can see it is going into the red, but it actually doesn't clip. It doesn't actually give you distortion. So even if I'm shouting like this, it would not distort. And the other thing that I recommend is in these radio mics, and if you look at my radio mic YouTube video, you'll see just, oh God, hang on, just there, it says auto. Now that isn't auto, it's actually a limiter that happens in the transmitter. And I would recommend you have that on auto so that, again, the peaks of sound are controlled both in the radio mic transmitter here and in the camera in input 3. And it works really well. There's perfect sound for most purposes if you're doing that sort of thing. Obviously, you can plug in any mic you like to the XLR inputs. That's absolutely fine. If you want to use 2 separate mics to two inputs, you just don't get that dual level safety valve there. Okay, if you wanted to change what you're listening to in the headphones, it's right down at the bottom. It's a really odd place to have it, but it's right in this. you know, the toolkit sound option, and then it's 4-channel audio monitoring. And then this allows you to listen to what you want to. Now, I would suggest that you listen to 3 and 4 because those are your 2 radio mics. And then the mic on the camera just takes care of itself because obviously you've got the double levels there to guard against peaking. But other monitoring options are available. You can just listen to, what you can't do is listen to channel 3 separately or channel 4 separately, but you can listen to everything. That's 1 and 3 in the left ear, 2 and 4 in the right. But normally I'd suggest you have it on 3 and 4 because that would give you the two radio mics in one in one ear, one in the other ear, sort of thing. Okay. Well, this lens that's on the camera at the moment is the 24 to 240, and it's pretty good in terms of zoom range. Absolutely fantastic. 10 times zoom, really really quite powerful. Just a minute. Camera, there we go, and we're going to come out the menu like that. So again, you get a view of my very untidy room here, but in terms of zoom, anyway, if you put this lens onto a different camera, obviously because the f number changes, you'd expect it to change exposure when you zoom in and out, but it's not, is it? As I zoom in, it's not changing exposure at all. And that is a big feature of this lens with this camera. So even though the f number has gone to 6.3, it hasn't changed the exposure, which is really great. Okay. And this was the 24 to 240 f3.5 to 5.6. The next one is a prime lens. So the prime lens is the 90mm, which is this one here. So the main thing about this one is that it's an f2.8. So the f2.8 means, well, it's basically got a lower f-stop, which is fantastic for throwing the background out of focus. So really, it's an interview lens. You can get some really great results. Just pop this one on the camera. Right, that's f2.8. Okay. Obviously, as I go up in the f numbers, the background is coming into focus. So that's at f16, and you can see there's a big depth of field. But as the f number goes lower, then I can get that shallow focus background, which is really nice. Also, it is a macro lens. Now that might work if my hand is here. Let's just see how close I can go. Woo. The only way you get that to work is by sliding the lens. So the front of the lens has a sliding action like that. So when it's back, you're in full manual with end stop, so it clicks at the end. But if you want to focus closer, you have to slide it forward and then sort of turn it like this until it actually hits that macro point. Okay, but I used this in one of the I did a little interview at the Cenotaph. So I'm just going to share that with you, just so you can see the sort of look that you would get.
Remembrance Day with all the Jewish ex-servicemen.
Okay.
From.
Can you hear sound, Dan?
Yeah, we can. Yep.
Good. Okay.
The World Wars, marching, and all the bands and all the other youth clubs and everybody taking part. So yeah, it's been really good.
I'll just very quickly show you this lens, and just have a look how wide it is. So this is the super wide end of things. So woo, look at that. That's your 16 mil. So it's all very fisheye sort of looking, and you're going to see everything now, aren't you? Hello. So anyway, so there's a bit of a zoom. Obviously, you can zoom like that, but it's only an f4 lens, so that's sort of okay. You know, for the wide angle shots there, that's sort of working nicely. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about steady shots, and because the steady shot is absolutely amazing. So what I did on that shoot was, well, because I couldn't see above a crowd, you know, I just turned up at the back of the crowd. I needed to get higher above the crowd. And so what I did was lift up the camera on the little tripod. And I really like this tripod. It's absolutely fantastic. The only thing that's a bit odd with it is when taking the camera off, and this little lever here, you unscrew, and most tripods you slide the camera back, but on this one you press the button down, so you're actually pressing like that, and it releases the camera in one go. So you actually just take it off like that. So you slide it in and then click it down, just click, and then of course you've got to remember to tighten the little screw up. But what I wanted to show you was another clip, and this would show the which one is it gonna be? Let's find it. It's this one. So what I did was lift the whole camera up on the tripod to get above the crowd. Now the thing is that normally would result in a very sort of wobbly shot, because I'm handheld basically, aren't I? And trying to hold the camera steady above the crowd. But look what happens at the end of the shot when, so if you see the start, hang on, here I am. So I'm lifting it up, lifting it up, lifting it up, horribly wobbly, up I go, up, and then if I hold it steady, oh, look at that. So that was literally lifting the whole tripod up with the camera at the top and trying to hold it steady. And the reason it works so well is because the steady shot has a special mode called active. So if we press the function button, which is just here on the back of the camera, so that you've got your little wheel and the function button. So if I press that, I get a special menu. And the one I'm interested in is the steady shot, this one, steady shot. So I've got standard, hang on a sec, or active. Now, active does a little bit of a zoom in because it's employing electronic steadying. So if I just take the camera off and go handheld here, if I turn the steady shot off completely, let's imagine we zoomed in a bit. I'll get a bit of focus going on. Let me try and get, who have I got? Let me go for Bill there. So this is terrible. This is terrible, isn't it? This is really wobbly because I'm handheld. Okay, let's put the steady shot on. That's standard. So that's helped quite a lot, hasn't it? That really has helped. But if I go to active and hold the camera still, is really, really rock steady. Pretty much. Okay. So the idea then is that you use the active if you're wanting to get it really steady. But the problem is that if you use that all the time, active is very steady, but if you try and do a developing shot or you're moving the camera, it sort of runs out of correction and does this sort of thing. So it's not recommended all the time. Okay, so let's move on to focus, because there's a lot to talk about with focus. And the main thing is you've got an auto manual button. So the button is just at the top here, labeled AF on, and that toggles between auto and manual. So if we just look at how that works, let's just look at that a second. So at the moment, the focus is MF at the left-hand side, just the left-hand side there, and then I go AF. So I've got MF and AF, okay? So obviously in manual focus, you can turn the ring on the lens, so that will bring us in and out of focus, as you might expect. You can also have peaking. So on the function menu here, you've got peaking on and off. You can have that on and you get the red outlining as you might expect. But the big feature of this camera is the autofocus. So if we do go to autofocus, the first thing you're seeing is that it's recognized a face. Now, if you're not happy with the face recognition, you can use touch focus. So the idea of this is that the touch screen allows you to positively change focus on the camera. Now, when it's plugged in like it is now, I can't actually show you that. So I'm going to have to unplug the camera from the from there and show you it on my little camera here. So what I can do here, see there's a box there. And if I want to move that box, it will focus on whatever I'm pressed on. So if I had the ability here to go for there, like that. So she's in focus there, and then I do this, like that. And he's in focus there, and then eventually I could, ooh, where's my other guy in the background? Is he thought? No, he's there. So I can touch there, like that.
And then it seems to recognize the face by putting a box around it as well. So is that like a face?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can turn off the face recognition and just use the touch focus. That would be a quite valid way of focusing the camera. But the interesting thing is that in that function menu, there's a speed adjustment. You get the transition speed. So that will adjust how quickly the focus pulls. So if I had that really slow like that, when I touch the screen, it will pull focus a lot slower. So if I'm doing that, it takes about 3 or 4 seconds to actually go. So go there, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 seconds. Do it again, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 seconds to do it. Whereas if we had the speed at the fastest, which is like that, that will be, let's just, so I'm on him there and then touch there and touch back. It's very difficult to show touch. But you can also use the touch focus using the eyepiece, because the screen works as a touch pad. So if we look at the camera like that, and then we said we're going to use the eyepiece, so I'm going to press that middle button. So now I'm using the eyepiece, okay? So I'm going to be looking down the camera like that, but the touch screen is actually going to still work, so that you can press areas on the screen and move that box around. And I'm pretty sure it still won't work when we connect it up, because that's just the way they seem to have done it. When you plug an external monitor in, it so can I? No, there's no touch. It just disables the touch feature, and I can't show. Oh, I nearly showed you it before, didn't I? With my little camera, that sort of worked, maybe. So hang on a sec. So if we look down there, can we see a picture? Will it switch on? No. Let's check that. Oh no, because of, oh right, so hang on. Unplug the telly, and now it should work. There you go. So you can see down there, can't you? Just about. So I'm touching the, see that moving the pad around. So my thumb is here, moving around the screen like that. And then you look down there and there it is. So I can touch on whatever I want to be in focus, even though I'm using the eyepiece, which is great, especially if it's bright sunlight and you can't see things. Yeah, just to say also that I've programmed a button to change this screen between normal and sunny weather. See, sunny weather makes it so much brighter. It changes the brightness of the LCD. You can't see it here. It's hardly changing, but it really is changing in real life. So sunny weather gives you a much brighter screen. And I've programmed that in because there's two buttons up here for recording. You've got your main button for recording there. So that pops you into record like that. But the one behind it, that is now doing the screen. So that's changing the screen between sunny weather and not. So that's what the button does. It gets you into the monitor brightness menu by doing that. But of course, the shutter button pops you into record with a nice red outline around the edge of the picture, which is quite nice. Rec. I'm going to, oh God, hold it steady, Andy. Stop recording. That's that one. Okay. So yeah, the whole focus options are really amazing. You can get face recognition, which is really good if you're on that 90mm lens, because it's a very shallow depth of field. And when people move backwards and forwards, it will track the motion by locking onto the face. And that would be on the, let's just look at the camera again. Okay. So yeah, the eye is recognized there because there's a little square on the eye, and that shows you that the focus is locked onto the eye. But what you can do is use that to get focus and then go into manual. So that's locked it just by pressing that AF button. But you can also change the parameters. You can have the transition speed. So you can have it really fast or somewhere in the middle, which I would recommend somewhere in the middle. And that stops it twitching. And then there is another parameter called sensitivity. I'm just calling this sensitivity. And that's basically the choices between locked on, which means it needs to be persuaded to change, or responsive, which means that it goes straight away. So if I'm moving the camera to someone else like that, obviously it's gone pretty quickly to Bill there, and then back to Helen there. But if we had the sensitivity on locked on, so it's locked onto it, so I'm going to move to Bill, and then it's still on Helen, isn't it? Oh, now it's gone to Bill. So it waits, and then eventually goes. So you can imagine using that in different scenarios. If you want to lock onto a face, you've only got one contributor, your main subject, and you're following them round. You don't want it to be hopping onto other people's faces. So you could put it on locked on. Whereas if it doesn't matter who you're filming, it's just a crowd and you just want any face in it, then you can put it on responsive, and it will go quickly to new faces. So exposure, well, the iris is pretty straightforward. That's just the wheel at the front of the camera. The ISO, we recommend having it on auto. And what that does is means that you are essentially in auto exposure, but you can lock it. And the button to lock it is the this AEL button, which is just there. So what happens is when you press that button, it locks the ISO. So now if I move the camera and shine it at a light or whatever, it won't change. But if I unlock it, it's just changed, you see. And if I went all the way into the light, you see the ISO is going down. Now it's flashing. Do you see it's flashing? That means you've run out of acceptable ISO. If it's flashing, you've got to do something with the F number or something like that. But if it's not flashing, then it's absolutely fine. The quality is fine. The range of ISOs is amazing, okay? But if we lock the ISO with that button like that, then that gives us a fixed exposure level. But what if we don't like it? What if we want to change it? So I'm here and I just want to make the picture slightly darker possibly. Well, I can use the button, this EV wheel at the top. So this is just above the A, that's the one that locks it. This is the one that allows you to change what it is. So then I can go darker or brighter even. And as long as my ISO doesn't flash, the quality is absolutely perfect. So I can
This is like
set,
fine-tuning the ISO, is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you can use zebras if you wish. There's zebra here, zebra on off, and then you can change the zebra settings. I would generally recommend 85% is my usual zebra, but we're going to turn that off for the minute. Okay, so really the exposure is a completely different way of doing it. You essentially let the camera give you an exposure, press the AEL button to lock it, and then if you don't want to make a small adjustment, use the EV wheel to do that. In very bright sunlight, you will need ND filters, and unfortunately the camera doesn't have them built in. So where are they? They're just screw on ND filters. I didn't use ND filters on that shoot. I found that the camera was actually able just about to give me what I needed with the ISO, but it was overcast. It wasn't sunny, so I got away with it. But on a bright sunny day, you will need to put the ND filters in, especially if you want to use low F numbers and get the shallow depth of field. Then, oh, well, shutter is just the wheel at the back of the camera. And normally we go for a 50th of a second. That would be the recommended shutter. So I'm adjusting the shutter speed there. I mean, worldwide, I'm not sure, maybe 60 would get rid of flicker in some countries. And also if you're using different frame rates, that would be an issue as well. White balance is very straightforward, really is very straightforward. It's all on the C1 button. And let me just do that. So C1 is on top of the camera. No, sorry, wait a minute. Back of the camera. And you've got every option under the sun here, daylight, shade, cloud, and all these different options. And if you want to set your own, you can dial it. So you can dial the white balance with that, or you can go to a custom and set it. So we'd need to point the camera at something. God, won't like that, will it? But I'm going to try. Do it there. So yeah, it did actually. It's just what's in that square box. So that's working okay for us there. C1 is white balance. You get 3 white balance memories, custom white paper ones. and then you get all of these other presets, which, or auto, but if you can avoid auto, I would, if you can. Now, there is a digital zoom, but truthfully, I don't think the quality is that great. It's accessed by one of the arrows. You can do that sort of thing. It's actually usable when you're recording. So when you're recording like this, if you go for the digital zoom, it goes slowly like that. So it's a way of getting an in-vision zoom if you're really desperate, but it does stop rather abruptly. So, you know, going to 1.5, stopping recording, and it's really quick like that. But when you're recording, you can do a little creep in. But again, it's a bit of a jerk when it stops. So I don't know. It's there if you want it. Okay. Slow-mo you can get from the wheel at the top. So there's a mode wheel just there. So that is at the top of the camera next to the EV wheel. And you can see the viewfinder there. So it's just there. And it's got an S and Q position. So if I go to S and Q like that, so I've turned it round to S and Q. So we're now in 100 frame a second here. Okay, so there's no audio and we're at 100 frame a second. We can go higher than 100 frame a second, but the unfortunately the cards start to conk out a bit in terms of using your V90 card. I mean, I tried to do 200 at the Cenotaph and it said can't do it. So, but that was because I was in a very high quality codec and I was asking it to do 200 frame a second. So that was pushing it a bit too far for the V90 cards. And the advice is that when you're in slow-mo, that you use the APS-C mode. So when we're in slow-mo, to get the very best quality, we need to press that crop button like that. So you can see I'm in 100 frame a second still. Bottom right, when I crop in, I get the little symbol bottom right when it crops in. And you do actually get a better quality if you use APS-C. You get less aliasing. So in normal frame, it's a bit zingy and fine detail will have a little sort of steppy moire sort of things. But if you use APS-C, that goes away.